Hi and good morning, it's Shane from maverickstar. We're in the man cave again and we have been conducting over the last few days some experiments with the HHO generator. If you're not familiar with one of those is, it's a method of using electrolysis to produce two gases. You're splitting the water molecule of its fundamental atoms, which is hydrogen and oxygen, and of course HHO generator, the clue's in the name. It obviously produces two hydrogen atoms and one oxygen atom each time it fractures the water molecule. So why have we been doing experiments with this? We're trying to get an efficient result, and the experiment that we conducted was first of all putting some piezo transducers or piezo speakers around the container that holds the water, and in the water we've got two electrodes, one charged positive, one negative. On the positive we get the hydrogen atoms form, on the negative we get the oxygen atoms form. And what we're trying to do is come up with a way of refining it to make it very efficient and produce more. And I can conclude that over the experiments that we've been doing using from 0 to 1 gigahertz of frequency, we can conclude that we have found an ideal frequency, and the frequency method, as opposed to using just a standard flow of electricity like you would get from a power pack or something like that, is more efficient, probably about 40% more efficient. I'm going to show you just quickly the results that we're getting, and I will say at this point that this is just a test. We're using probably not the best electrolyte in the water. We're using just ordinary household salt, which is sodium chloride, and the plates are not perfectly designed. That is going to come at a later date. And why are we doing this? Well, for one, your governments aren't investing any money in this. They would rather invest their money in something like CERN, the Large Hadron Collider. And of course, what would you benefit from that? Absolutely nothing. Okay, so they found a Higgs boson particle. What does that do for you? Does it reduce your electricity costs or your energy costs? Does it make your food any cheaper? No. And that's the same for the James Watt telescope and any other scheme or project that the government will come up with these days. Never directly benefits you, and that's why they won't invest money in stuff like this, because if everyone is producing their own electricity or fuel for that matter, and this can do both because we're producing gas which can be ignited in a combustion engine, and therefore we can use that combustion engine to either generate electricity or to get us from A to B. And that's why your government won't invest in that. Let's face it, if you've watched Davos this week, you'll be shocked, because what is the top of their agenda? Two things: controlling disinformation, which we have been targeted on this channel by YouTube from pressures coming from governments to do so. And what they want to do is target misinformation and disinformation, and it's at their discretion of what they deem is disinformation and misinformation. I think you would agree with me with some of the work that we've done, and they do not like scientists telling you this because it is credible. They would rather go after us as opposed to anyone else on YouTube because we are credible, and they don't like that. But we know who are the biggest misinformers of information. And if you've been watching Davos this week, the top of their agenda is to deal with people like me and others on YouTube and other social media platforms. They've also been having regular attacks on Elon Musk with X platform, because he doesn't regulate as they would like him to that platform and its social media. And what else have we heard from Davos as well? We've heard that their second agenda is climate. Again, when it comes down to climate and what they are speaking of changes or the results that change climate, basically it's two things. Two of their main things are methane and CO2. And we both know that they're trace gases. in fact, methane, which they're targeting farms all over Europe now. It's not just the United Nations, it's not what's going on at Davos, and it's not what's taking place in the European Union. It's global. It's a global team effort of politicians to deliberately raise money on false pretexts using the culprit, CO2 and methane. I'll just tell you now that CO2 is a trace gas, measures less than 0.5% in our atmospheric gases combined, and methane is 200 times less abundant than CO2. They never mention the water vapour in the atmosphere. That's very strange, because we know that that's on the increase in the upper atmosphere, and we know that because cosmic rays come through our weakened magnetosphere, and as a result they interact with water vapour, and that sets up a platform where this can condense on, and therefore we end up with more water in our atmosphere. And of course this affects the jet streams. They don't even talk about this. They don't even talk about it as a climate contributor. Can you believe that? We've also got the fact we are experiencing, as I've said many times, a weakened heliosphere as a result of low solar output. And of course that allows more outer solar system and intergalactic cosmic rays into our solar system. So first of all, we've got more coming into the solar system as a result of the weakened heliosphere, and we have more coming through our upper atmosphere because we've got about 20 to 25% reduction in our magnetosphere strength, and therefore we are getting more water vapour in the jet streams, both subtropical and polar, and both over northern and southern hemispheres. On top of that as well, we are heading, and no scientist can deny this, we are at the end of the best times on our planet with regards to global warming. Okay, we have experienced an interglacial period which is around 12,000 years, and we are at the end of that, and we could be going back into that point of the Milankovitch cycle where our orbit changes from a spherical one to an elliptical one, like an egg shape, and we go further out on the orbit around our sun, and that causes a glacial period to come about. And that's what the Milankovitch cycle is all about. And as a result of that, the Earth will cool. And I've showed you temperature over 450,000 years. So we've seen 5 cycles almost. We're in the 5th cycle on that chart I usually show you. And it also shows you CO2. And when naturally the Earth cools in this cycle of 100,000 years, the CO2 levels fall. So, there is no need for all this alarmism with regards to CO2. Firstly, because it naturally goes higher in the time of a interglacial period, a warm period of that 100,000 year cycles, and it naturally drops when we go back into the colder part of that cycle, when we go back into glacial periods. So, there is no concern with CO2. It's doing its natural thing. And let's face it, over 99% of the CO2 that is in our atmosphere has not been put in there by man. Another thing that they don't clearly inform you about. So when it comes down to misinformation and disinformation, well, there's disinformation from their point of view because they don't want to tell you how little CO2 is in the atmosphere and how little man's contribution to that atmosphere gas is, because they're making money out of it. And what is the money that they're making out of it? Well, it's estimated at over $1 trillion industry now. This net zero and trying to reduce that net zero, that carbon footprint that we put on into the atmosphere. They're trying to reduce it down to zero, which they will never achieve, ever, no matter what they try and do. And it doesn't matter if you give them as much money in the world. You could give them all the money in the world and they wouldn't be able to do nothing about it, because naturally the Earth emits from its oceans and land 99.5% or more CO2 into the atmosphere, and that is the same for methane. If you want to even take methane and bring it into this argument, it's ridiculous at this point, because methane is 200 times less abundant in our atmosphere than even the trace gas CO2. I hope that clears up a few things for you guys. So the reason why I want to invest time now in this HHO generator is to see exactly what it is capable of doing. To do that, we've got to make it efficient so it doesn't cost more than what it does to produce the gas. And we want to see, at bottom of the end of the day, we want to see if it can run an engine, and more so, we want to see if it can run an engine that has a generator on it that can sustain the power needed to fracture the water molecule in the application that we can eventually, if this does work. And you know, I always test everything I see on the internet. Electrolysis is nothing new. Over the last 30 years, we've learned, or probably a little bit longer than that, we've learned that frequency does help the reaction of breaking the molecule. I've spent, you know, the last 3 days going through a range of frequencies from 0 hertz to 1 gigahertz, and found that the higher you go up the frequency, the less productive and the less electrolysis is produced, or the less gas is produced. It's at very, very low frequencies. So get a pen and paper. This is what our results find, right? So we're running it at 6.3 amps. That's the draw at 3 volts, and we are using a frequency of 4.2 hertz. So, sorry, 42 hertz. 42 hertz is what we're using. And coincidentally enough, when I set the experiment up the other day and I showed you the coil with that frequency of 42 hertz going through it, it was the frequency that encouraged magnets to rotate. And coincidentally, that is the best frequency for generating hydrogen and oxygen gas by splitting or fracturing the water molecule. So I'll just quickly show you our results here of what we've managed to get. If I can just turn that round so that you can see the electrodes in the bottom there. We've got it connected just straight up to the amplifier, which is being powered by the frequency generator, and I will just press the button and you can see when we put frequency of 42 hertz in there, we get a nice production of hydrogen and oxygen gas. Switch it off and the production goes down. So that was the experiment. We used piezo's on the outside, or transducers, these, to see if we get a better reaction. We put them on all faces of the container holding the electrolyte, water and salt. Found it didn't change anything at all. We also use these, which are used in ultrasonic cleaning. These are very powerful transducers. They require a lot of power to run them, but we even tried this and we had no better results. So by powering the frequency outside the tank wasn't as good as actually powering the electrodes that are creating it, and I suppose that's because it's a more direct source. It's in contact with the water, whereas these was just in contact with the tank. So we was resonating the tank. We probably was getting some resonance pass over into the fluid, but it wasn't enough to make any noticeable difference. But you know, you've got to experiment with these things. Another experiment which I'll be showing you guys is this, maybe in the next week or so, and I want you to think why I would put a speaker or a piezo facing another piezo. Basically, we've got 2 speakers pointing at each other. I'll tell you why. Because this sets up a standing wave. If you used an oscilloscope, you know, when you're tuning the frequency generator, you will see on the oscilloscope like lots of infinities connected to each other, the symbol of infinity, or it looks like sidewards figure 8s going across the oscilloscope. What they are is standing waves, and when you get 2 speakers like this, or 2 transducers pointing at each other, you get a standing wave form. So you can take a little bit of polystyrene and you can stack it up in the waveform that you've got in between the 2 speakers. It levitates basically, but you have to have it in a confined space, so the levitation will only take place in there. But it is nice to see these things work, and if you're interested in science, you know, that's a good thing. Another thing we can do at a later date as well, I would like to, being we've got those big piezo transducers, is go and investigate again. Remember when we done the star in the jar? So basically you bombard it like you do here. So you've got two on the side of a very old light bulb. You take the top off so you can fill it with water. You bombard it with frequency. You encourage a bubble to form in the standing wave, and then you hit it with a lot of pressure by upping the ampage. And what should happen is that star should cavitate first and then collapse. When it collapses, if you knock the lights off, you have a luminescence in the collapsed bubble. And that's quite an interesting experiment. It was one that we done, if you remember, 15 years ago. But I'm getting back into some of these things again. So where we are with this HHO generator, the next step is to order some, marine grade, I think, stainless steel plates. Now, it's going to be a while. I'm not going to rush out to get them because they're quite pricey, especially if you start having them manufactured for you, so the ends are nicely rounded off with laser cutting, and the holes that clamp it all together are laser cut as well. It's very neat, but each plate costs around about £8. If on eBay you can get them already made. That's 100 by 100, which should fit nice in one of these tubs because they're 150 by 150 mils. So the next step is to get about 40 of them plates, and that's going to happen when I get a bit of cash to buy them. But the results will get shown to you. If something comes out of this, like we can run a generator, it's going to save you money. And if we can come up with a safe way of doing this, so that, and an easy way where it's where someone with not a lot of technical ability can do it, then that's great. That's going to save us a lot of money, because at the moment our government's not interested in saving us money. They're interested in wasting missiles in the Red Sea and giving Ukraine billions of pounds, giving Israel billions of pounds. They're not investing in the NHS or your medical facilities. They're not invested in schools. They're not repairing the roads, because half the roads now in the UK might as well be this. Well, they replicate almost the same terrain as the moon. With the potholes everywhere. It's ridiculous. I mean, they would rather spend the money on the HS2. And if you're in whatever country, your government aren't spending the money on things that would facilitate you and improve your day of life in any way. What we are seeing the government do, and they don't like people like me talking about it, is what we are seeing them do is launder this money. It's clear. I don't believe that our government would just give away £2.5 billion to a country in support of murdering its citizens and citizens of another country. This is where we've got to. In this day and age, we have no better mentality than what we had in the Second World War. And clearly, these people that we see at Davos are world leaders are nothing but hypocrites. They're turning up, and this, they are turning up in the private jets, putting in one trip or in 1 week more CO2 than an average family does in a year. And they're then telling us that we've got to cut back on CO2. Yeah, it's just it's just a mechanism to, justify sending money here and justify sending money there. Because as soon as the money leaves your country, your taxpayers, as soon as that taxpayer's money leaves, it's never coming back. It's like a bucket of water with lots of holes in. And if you don't plug the holes, then the water's going to drain out. And of course, when that happens, you end up with economic, situations like we've got now. And the other thing I looked at that today, you might want to have a look at that, is the Dry Baltic Index. Because what we've seen since December is a very sharp drop in trade because of what's been going on, most likely in the Red Sea at the moment. And that means that your components, if you work for a manufacturing company, it's going to put extra time and delay on that, on getting those components so that you can assemble what it is you're manufacturing. That's if you work in that line. So there might be, you know, some layoffs as a result of that. But most likely, you're going to go and see more price inflation at the shops, you know, especially for stuff that is imported from other parts around the world, and especially those continents that used the Suez Canal as a point to save going around the African Horn. You know, so, you know, there's probably another week and a half to 2 weeks added extra journey, added fuel for the actual transportation of that stuff. It is going to affect the prices in the shops, isn't it? So, you know, it's a sad, I can't help but say this, guys, and I think you'll agree, we are in a sad state of affairs at the moment globally. You know, it seems like the war is ever increasing in the Middle East. You know, there is no signs of the war ending at the moment in Ukraine. And, you know, it's more sad because the amount of people that have lost their lives in Ukraine, in Russia, even in Russia, you know, these are people with parents, children, you know, on both sides. And it's a shame because, you know, that what we should be doing is sitting down, working out the problems, not using bullets to work out the problems and bombs. And that's what's happening. You know, with Israel, same thing. You know, there needs to be a solution. And the only way you can get one of those at some point is you've got to sit down and talk. And you know what? The nice thing about talking is no one's dying. No one's going to die from whatever is exchanged in words. You know, but they will if you can't sit down and work out your issues with each other, and you end up going to resort to, you know, using missiles and bombs. You're going to kill people. And it's always, guess who? The civilians that get caught up in this. And, you know, I have nightmares just thinking about what has gone on in Gaza, as well as everywhere else in the world. You know, the amount of loss of life in the Ukraine, we're talking hundreds of thousands of people on both sides. And now we are possibly seeing the Middle East ignite, you know, with Iran, you know, attacking Iraq, Israel and Pakistan. You know, they're picking on a nuclear power country when they fire missiles into Pakistan, and we've seen retaliation from Pakistan, Iran, you know. And of course, you know, the United States are you know, talking about the fact that a lot of these bases that they've got around the world, or especially in the Middle East, have been attacked. You know, the ships of the United States have been attacked in the Red Sea. So as the British ones, so as the civilian container ships and just transport ships. This is the state of our world that we're in. And, you know, that's probably a good enough reason at this point, if you can afford to, is to get yourself some preparations. You know, I'm one that puts my money where my mouth is. I mean, this in this room here is not a great deal of food, but it is enough to keep me going, you know. If I have to rely on that, it's enough to keep me and my family going for, you know, perhaps 2 or 3 months, which is better than having nothing. You know, I have got, you know, bug out bags, NBC suits and other things, you know, medical equipment, a few, you know, medical provisions that you'd need just if you couldn't get them. But, you know, it doesn't mean I'm crazy because I've got these things. If ever I need them, they're there. I always keep, you know, things stocked up at a reasonable rate. So, you know, what I'm saying to you is I'm not telling you to do anything I wouldn't do myself. And I think these times that we're in right now, you know, that if it's the least thing you can do, you know, an added extra bit of food wouldn't be a bad thing. You know, we had, for the first time in a long time, 4 power cuts here in 2 days. They weren't prolonged ones, but it just shows you, you know, that the grid is not stable. It's probably because of the wind as well that we've had the last few days. You know, it's probably causing trees to fall on power lines and stuff like that. But, you know, I think if we can be self-sustaining with the production of a gas that we can use for our car or our generators, and not rely on, you know, the extortionate prices that we're paying. I mean, myself, I'm paying nearly £2,500 now. I worked it out a year on gas and electric. You know, if I could create that just using the most abundant source on this planet, water. You know, we're 2/3 water on this planet. If we could create self-sufficiency by generating our own gas, that would be a big thing. You wouldn't have to spend £100,000 on a Tesla. And Elon Musk hates the fact that you can run cars and engines on HHO gas through electrolysis. And there's been a lot of, there has been quite a bit of research in the field of this, because you can buy cars that run on, or you can convert cars that run on hydrogen gas. The problem is with hydrogen gas is you need large containers to hold it, and they have to be special containers as well. And it does, in a lot of sense, require large volume storage facilities for that sort of gas. But if you can produce it at demand with one of these HHO generators, that eliminates everything. So as soon as you, let's say you had your car running on it and you switched your car off, as soon as you switched your car off, you would also shut the production down of HHO. So, you're only going to use it on demand. So at the point of use is where you're going to start generating it. And if you can if you can generate enough to run your own generator at home and your car, and you've saved yourself a lot of money. But not only that, you can also burn it as a gas to cook on. So it's a win-win situation. And it's no longer, if cars can do this, then what's the point of an EV? EVs, as you probably know, and this is probably a discussion for another day, and I don't want to keep you more than what I have to, but EVs are not environmentally clean because of the damage they do to the environment through the manufacturing of cobalt, or the gathering of cobalt and lithium. Children are still working in these mines. We've moved the diamond industry, slave and child labour, over to the cobalt and lithium. The environmental impacts are massive, because in a lot of cases they're open cast mines where they're doing this. And it's not the way forward. When you burn hydrogen and oxygen gas, you get water as a result. So you start off with water, you use it in a combustion engine, you get water back. We're 2/3 water on this planet, and there's an ample supply of that. With that, we don't need to, if we don't want to, start drilling for crude oil. You could see why, petroleum companies wouldn't be interested in a hydrogen oxygen generator, or they wouldn't want to invest any money in it, because it would take the business away from them as soon as somebody does come up with, a way of doing it at an affordable rate, and at a rate it can be used. So you can see why they wouldn't want you to have it. And of course, governments around the world are not going to want you to have a HHO generator either, because their buddies who produce the electricity from the power station don't want you producing your own electric. They don't want you to be self-sufficient and reliant on nobody. So that's why I feel it's worth doing the research on this. And so it's going to be a slow thing. I'm not saying it's going to disappear into the infinity and we're not going to ever come back to this, because it is on the bench now. It has got my attention. I think it's time to do a little bit more work, a little bit more refining of the electrodes where we're going to conduct the electrolysis at, and then share the information like we have done today. So 6.3 amps at 3 volts at 42 hertz. That's the golden numbers for this at the moment. So the next stage is to build now a better HHO generator. Now that we've got that information from the last few days of doing experiments, now that we've got that information, we can just put that straight into the new generator and generate now larger quantities of gas, and then we'll see if it can run something. That's where we are with this. A big thanks for your time. I think it's important that, some of us that are capable of doing these things do them. It really is, because it only takes one breakthrough. And I'm not saying that I'm going to be the guy that does it. I'm just saying at the moment that I'm prepared to have a go and put some time into it and a little bit of my money. And if you want to chip in a few bucks as well to this, there's a link down there in the description. I'm going to be doing the magnetic pole reversal once a month again for you guys, so don't worry about that. If you want to support us, what we are doing here and what we stand for, then the link is there. You know, we're counting on you to have our back here, even though it is difficult times. You know, we're all in it together. Okay, having said that, you know, look after your loved ones, take it easy. I'll be back maybe in a couple of days with a bit more information. Maybe we can get this going so you can see them standing waves if you're interested in that. Just a science experiment. So take it easy, guys. I'll say what I usually do. Bye for now.